Welcome, Guillaume.
Thank you.
This is your first time at LeWeb?
No, it's not the first one.
Not at all.
I've been several years.
Can you tell us a little bit, I'm sure everybody in the audience has maybe heard of some of the products of Ferrero, but can you tell us a little bit about your presence in the world and some of your brands?
Okay, so Ferrero is one of the leading companies in the chocolate confectionery. We have factories and commercial activities in quite all countries around the world, in the US, in Europe, which is the strongest market for us, Asia also. Well, we are present in all these countries, something like 22,000 people across the world for something like 6 billion revenue.
And the topic of today that we wanted to bring up with you is, since Ferrero is so well known in the world, you have over 45 million fans for all of your brands worldwide, but you have a big question. Now that you have them there, so what? So what are you doing now to deal with all of these fans?
So first of all, to be really fair, this is not something that we've been organizing. This is something which happens to us and that we've not been, managing. This is a bit specific situation. We discovered all this passion from our fans years after years, and they all decided to gather together. If you take the example of the Nutella Facebook page, which is something like 12 million people as of today, this is something which really happened alone. This is not something that we've been doing. Same for Ferrero Rocher, which holds something like 12 million international, Kinder Surprise, Kinder, all this Tic Tac also is quite strong with several millions. So there is a big specificity here.
But you didn't create all of the pages.
No, we didn't create anything of that. We're just trying, to now find the appropriate way to engage with these people. Because usually, as soon as you talk about international pages, people love to say, okay, scale doesn't matter. And indeed, it's not a run to go to the next 100,000 people. We're not running after numbers. But for companies like ours, CPG companies, if you want to get understanding from internal folks and consideration, you need to have a certain amount of scale for the pages. Because when you have every day millions of people eating your products, if you are managing or trying to engage on Facebook program with 100 people, this will not talk to anyone internally. So the notion of scale is a first step for us to kickstart the work. It's absolutely not the ultimate goal, but it's a starting point to then start to engage with these people and try to find the best way to do that. Because when you have 12 million people waiting on this page, it's not like if you were launching the page from your side initially, where you give the principles of the game.
And what about the pages that you don't control, though? I mean, is there some way to let them know that, for example, you want to engage with them, you appreciate that they're on your pages, but those aren't your official pages?
So definitely we're watching what's happening on these pages. We're listening a lot. Sometimes we are interacting, but the evolution of Facebook makes it sometimes quite difficult, to connect with these pages which are not identified to as at least the owners of this page are much more difficult to find now than what happened in the past. And usually when people like to talk about the Coca-Cola story, where they've been connecting with these people behind the pages, this is something which is much more difficult to do nowadays because you have no way to connect with the owners of the page. And for example, in France, we have a page which is Nutella plus crêpe, which has something like a little 3 million people, which is absolutely not an official page.
A little 3 million people.
And you just can't do anything because you can't connect with these people who are behind the page. You can only leave messages on the wall and expect they will answer. But if they don't want to connect with you, you can't connect with them. And Facebook is really protecting the people who are behind the groups and want them to be free as soon as they are not destroying the brand. So it makes it very difficult to leverage, and to integrate these pages in the campaign.
And for the pages that you do manage, is it more at a national level? Is it an international level? How do you organize yourselves internally to deal with these pages?
So this is a big question. I don't know if we found the best way to do that. Actually, what we are trying to do is to manage the international pages from a central point, and so we allow every country who wants to participate to publish its own content on the wall at the destination of its own country, its own people. But we need to provide, an international framework because returning to really basics, the big thing for us is that we are really relying on the marketing positioning. And the most challenging point for us, which is linked to what Pete Placho said before, is really the fact that we need to keep focusing on the real value of the brands. And even if so many people want to speak with us, to connect with us, we're not always ready to do that. And there is often a big gap between what these people are talking about online and where marketing teams want to go. I know we need to connect, to find a way to do that, but it's not easy to convince people. You know, talking about how do you successfully launch a Facebook or a social program. I'm sure in the room you all have something like 5 golden rules that you could give me in just a few seconds on how to launch successfully a social media program. If you have these 5 questions or 5 tips in your head just now, just think about how many of these 5 crucial tips are oriented to internal people. In 99% of the case, everyone is talking about, okay, find strategic objective, define a value for the page, define metrics and KPIs. Okay, it's always looking outside because you want to connect with people outside. But the biggest challenge is not outside because these people are there, they want to connect with us. The biggest challenge is inside, where you have to be able, as digital managers, to convince marketing people that engaging with these people makes sense.
So how do you, as a digital manager with all of these brands in all of these countries, measure? What do you look for metrics?
So the first step, which is just something which gives the environment, is okay. What kind of dimension do we have in terms of page? Is it a page which is less than a million, or is the page with several millions? To scale, the attention, the international dimension, and the kind of story of value that we can bring to them. And then, of course, we have a full set of KPIs because the big story really begins there, which is all about engagements, because this is what we try to do with these pages. So how do we measure, of course, from the most basic impressions to the most deepness engagements that we can generate? So the sharing, the people talking about the page, all these new set of metrics, which is, by the way, changing every 6 months within Facebook, which doesn't make it easy to show the value on a fiscal year, because it's also what we have to do, deal with these basics, company, fiscal things, which doesn't fit always, with the Facebook roadmap.
But one thing that I found that was interesting when we were discussing backstage was you said that you're not necessarily looking for a story, or you don't feel like you necessarily have a story to share with people, but you do have a way of sharing with people to bring them in to have these interactions. So can you talk a little bit about how you work with fans, how you do engage with them, how you work to share content with them and get their content, and what you're looking at in terms of making sure that your presence is well established, that it's appreciated, and measuring that?
One of the issues that we have is that, I would say it's quite a positive problem, but still a kind of problem, which is that people love to go on our page and to say, okay, we love Nutella, we love Kinder Bueno, Kinder is great, so this is nice content. But you don't build engagement just on hundreds of declarations of love. Yes, Nutella is a love brand, and we are so happy to see that. But it's not enough to build a relationship with people. So we need to be able to find a story on which we are legitimate, which is not easy for us. For us, the research describes brands of FMCG like ours as boring brands. Why? Because we don't have a specific story within the product to say. Would it be Louis Vuitton or BMW? You can make people dream much more easily. Talking about Ferrero Rocher, well, you can't talk about months ago about Ferrero Rocher. You need to find something else to engage with the people and to make sure they accept you to start this conversation.
There are people that dream about Nutella, though, I believe.
I didn't say Nutella, I said another brand, but indeed. But even with Nutella, you're not going to talk about crepe all day long. You need to find something else, it's not enough. And people are already talking about crepe all day long, so it's something which is already in their hands. So the big question is, how do we make sure we find a territory of expression which has never been used before, because if you remind, since 50 last years, where Ferrero was launched, for example, in Europe, we've always succeeded thanks to television. So it's not me, the digital guy, who is going to save the company. The company just doesn't need me. The company is going well thanks to advertising. So I can only try to add value to what is already done, add another dimension in our communication process. But the company doesn't need me for that. Well, yes, there is a crisis, we are suffering, we could be even better if the crisis was not there. But television did all the success of Ferrero till now. So the digital geeks are not seen, as the people which were definitely needed and expected to bring the company in the new era. So yes, for all this notion of opening the conversation and starting to engage with our consumers, everyone is happy to accept this idea within the company. But the biggest question behind that is, okay, how do you demonstrate internally the value of this ongoing conversation? Because you can't measure the value immediately on sales. You can measure it quite immediately on brand equity terms. But this is where you definitely have to fight to bring this demonstration internally if you want to be seen, as the guy bringing concrete data that the company can develop.
And can we take just a second to talk about that concretely? How do you organize yourselves internally?
So I think this is really all this era of sharing, which happened outside companies, is now really coming inside the companies. And within Ferrero, there is nothing which is done by one single person. As I sometimes, as digital manager, I don't have any power. I don't own the brands. The only power I have is that I hold a little key in my hands, which can open the door to the big conversation. But this key is really little, very heavy at the same time, very risky for marketing people. They don't want me to open this door too wide. So I can't do anything alone, because I don't own the brands. I have to share everything to get, approval as soon as possible from every stakeholder, and the only thing I can do is, if I want to succeed and make sure I integrate into the project everyone as soon as possible to explain people what we're going to do, trying to show them, and this is probably the most difficult thing for us. As of today, I have not found a solution. How can I evaluate what I will get in return? How can I make projections?
So it's not even just on Facebook, because we were talking about Facebook here was the name of the panel, but obviously people are talking about your brands all over the web.
Yes, if you also consider Twitter, by example, I think there is not 3 minutes on Twitter without any mention of Nutella in the world. So, okay, this is...
I just sent a tweet, actually.
Okay, thank you. So this is nice, but, it's just kind of, the buzz, the noise is the starting point from my point of view of a community, but it's not a community. So how do you manage that level of permanent buzz on your brands? What is positive? What is neutral? What is negative? How do you bring that to marketing people? How do you make sure you can give a value to these permanent ongoing mentions of the products, of the brand? And how do you make sure you find a way to connect these people with us in a way that will accept and which will fit with the marketing objectives? Because at the end, it's still, we are a marketing-based company and we need to sell the products. So it brings really the conversation at a high level of value if you want to make sure people will understand that it's worth spending time, that it's worth speaking directly with these people.
And do you have specific times when you say, we have to answer this person, or what are your specific guidelines for answering people or not answering people? Since there are so many comments all day long, and you can't necessarily answer to every single person and say, thank you for talking about Nutella.
Okay, so usually using on the Facebook pages, by example, we are answering always to all requests, except those which are definitely to be moderated immediately, just based on the common sense notion of anyone. As soon as it's been insulting or so out of topic or rude, that kind of stuff, these ones are immediately moderated and we don't answer. But we get sometimes questions from, quite often questions from customers, and we do answer the question there. And if the place is not appropriate, we feel free, we give them the link to go to the right place to ask the question and then to find the answer they're looking for. So even on Twitter, where it's much more difficult, we've been managing once a kind of tricky situation where there was a father who was complaining that when he had his Kinder Surprise eggs in the hands at home, the Kinder Surprise was not in the eggs, so his little son was that disappointed. We had to find a way. So first of all, this is something which, cannot happen because it's an industrial process. So we know this can't happen. So there was something behind it. So we said, okay, sorry for that. Of course, on Twitter, we will send you new boxes of Kinder Surprise. And the father was really, wondering whether it was just marketing or if you were really going to go till the end. So we went till the end of the process. We sent back these 2 boxes of Kinder Surprise to this father, who got them something like 2 open days after. And then he shared the information also via Twitter, of course. So we had one single conversation which started to be a bit negative, which reached at the end something like 10,000 people because I've been following all the tweets across 3 countries in 3 hours, and it turned out positive at the end. But it's a starting point for us. We're learning.
Well, thank you so much, Guillaume du Gardier, for sharing your experiences. Thank you.